What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's some of my early thoughts ahead of Game Week 37. So I'm going to talk about Arsenal players because lots of people are considering them this week. Then we've got a couple of other players to talk about, some notes from the weekend, and I'm going to go through my team as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with what I think will be one of the big talking points this week, and that is which Arsenal players to bring in for Burnley at home, which looks like a great fixture. Then they've got Crystal Palace away in Game Week 38, which doesn't look as bad as it usually would because Crystal Palace are probably going to heavily rotate because they've got the Europa Conference League final the midweek afterwards. So Burnley at home, Palace away, not looking bad, and obviously Arsenal fighting for the title, so they've got no reason to rotate players right now. Although there is a scenario where the league is over before Game Week 38. So because Arsenal beat West Ham, if Man City drop points to either Crystal Palace or Bournemouth, then all Arsenal need to do is beat Burnley at home, and the league is done. Now, for the Crystal Palace game, we'll obviously see that before the Game Week 37 deadline, but it's possible that Man City win that game. We get to Game Week 37 deadline, we go triple Arsenal for Burnley at home, they beat Burnley, and then Man City lose or draw to Bournemouth. Remember, that game is 3 days after the FA Cup final, and Bournemouth will not rotate because they're fighting for Europe, and they will have had plenty of rest. So it is possible that City beat Palace, Arsenal beat Burnley, and then City drop points to Bournemouth, and then the title is over by Game Week 38. The problem with that is, if they beat Palace, you won't know until after Game Week 37. Now, obviously, it's possible that City just beat Palace and beat Bournemouth, and then the title is on till 38. I'm just saying it's a possible scenario where you might have triple City, triple Arsenal, and not quite know what the 11 will look like in Game Week 38. Now, for Arsenal, they've obviously got the Champions League final, and that's the Saturday after Game Week 38. So they've got 6 days rest. So it's not going to be as necessary for them to rest players. But also, it's an away game where potentially the league is done. So it's going to be more difficult to predict the 11. So I'm not saying you can't triple up on Arsenal because Burnley at home is great. And I think most of us want to be tripled up. I would just consider if, and again, it's a big if, City drop points in either of the next 2 games and the league's done by 38. How will that affect your team if you're not guaranteed which Arsenal players are going to start? That's all I would think about. How many transfers do you need to fix your team? How does the rest of the squad look like? It doesn't mean you can't triple up. Just think about these things. That's all I would say. In terms of the top 2 options people are going to be looking to bring in this week, it's Saka and Gyökeres. I will say if you've not got Gabriel, I would probably just get him because he's the best defender for the final 2 game weeks. Whereas with Saka and Gyökeres, there are other midfielders, there are other forwards that you could go for. But I think Gabriel, if you've not got him, he's the one. Between Saka and Gyökeres, I'm honestly not sure which is the better pick because I think they both start. I don't think I can sit here and tell you that Saka's minutes are guaranteed to be better. I think if I was putting money on who's going to play the longest in that Burnley game, it probably would be Saka, but I wouldn't put much money on that. I wouldn't have a huge amount of confidence. And I also think Gyökeres will take the next penalty. So Saka is clearly first choice right winger. Whereas I guess up front, you could see Havertz starting number 9. So maybe that favours Saka a little bit. But I just think Gyökeres starts against Burnley. So it's almost like a coin flip between the two. Gyökeres' goal threat from open play is better. I think he'll be on penalties. And Burnley at home is the kind of game that guy scores in. So in isolation, if nothing else matters, I think you can make a case that Gyökeres is maybe better than Saka. But it's going to... I think Game Week 37 and 38 are always difficult because it's going to come down to combinations and stuff a lot more because you don't have any long-term thinking to worry about. So if you're sat there saying, I've got to replace this forward, just forget about Saka, just get Gyökeres. It's not like one of them is miles better than the other one. If you're sat there with Thiago this week and João Pedro and Haaland against Palace at home, Spurs at home, Bournemouth away, you probably don't need to make a forward transfer, so look at Saka instead. It's difficult to split the two. I think, gun to my head, deadline in 5 minutes, I do prefer Saka, like a gut feeling. But I think you can make a case that Gyökeres is also great. So, Gabriel, Saka, Gyökeres, all good. Doubling up on the Arsenal defence is also a viable strategy, as it has been all season. The safest pick is Saliba or Raya, if you happen to need a new goalkeeper. But goalkeeper transfers tend to be a bit boring at this time of the season. So Saliba is probably the safest pick. I think Ben White went off with an injury. I'm not expecting to see him play in the final 2 games. We don't know when Timber's going to be back. Mosquera is fine. And he obviously is a bit more differential to Saliba, but I don't think he offers that much more. So I think in that case, I just play it safe with Saliba. And Calafiori apparently also went off with an injury at halftime yesterday. So you've kind of got to ignore him too. I know people are considering Lewis Skelly, and he's playing in midfield right now. And I suspect he will start against Burnley. If you want to take that punt, do it. But it just would never be a complete shock if Zubimendi came back in. So if I'm doubling up on the defence, I'm just buying Saliba, I think. And again, whether you go defensive or attacking will probably come down to what the rest of your team is looking like. With Eze, if I've got him, I'm keeping him. I'm not sure I'm buying him right now. I think if you look at the minutes over the last couple of games, like 66 against West Ham, 77 against Fulham, 52 against Newcastle. It's not like he went through this period. If you look at kind of game weeks 27 all the way up to 33, he started 5 of the 6 and played 90 in 3 of them. Since then, if you look at the last 5 matches, he's been benched in 1 and he's only got past 73 minutes once, which is the Fulham game. So the minutes aren't quite there. And also, Trossard has started the last 2 games left wing and played 90 minutes in both. So at the moment, Eze's not getting a looking left wing. He's only playing central. Havertz can play that position. Odegaard can play that position. There's just a lot of competition. So I don't think I'm taking the risk on Eze right now. Although, and again, there's only 2 game weeks to go. If you're sat there saying, what are you on about? Eze's a great pick. I want to go different. Do it, right? Who cares? There's 2 weeks left. But I'm not going to go there because I think the minutes have just dipped enough the last couple of games to not bother risking it. That brings me on to Trossard. I was kind of dead set against him before the West Ham game, I'll be honest. But playing back-to-back 90s, Martinelli barely getting a look in, and the fact he scored, which I don't think necessarily means he's definitely going to score next game, but I think it helps him get another start. That's the thing. So Trossard, I think right now, for Burnley at home, I'm buying Trossard over Eze. I know that's a bit reactionary, but that's just how it is right now. So I think the differential is Trossard. Maybe Eze if you want to risk the minutes. Saka versus Gyökeres. I'm not trying to sit on the fence, but it is very difficult to split them. Like I said, my gut feeling, if I could only choose one, is probably still Saka, but I'm not sure that's correct. I think Gyökeres starts. He's a flat track bully. He feels like that kind of flat track bully kind of player. Burnley at home is perfect for that, and I think he's going to take the next penalty. So I think you can make an argument Gyökeres is on par at the very least with Saka. Either way, I think Arsenal players are very much worth bringing in for Burnley at home. And if Man City beat Crystal Palace, I think you just take the risk that the title's still on for game week 38 and worry about it later. So if you don't want Arsenal attackers or you want to limit the amount you're bringing into your team, you could look at Everton attackers instead. Ndiaye at 6.2 million and Dewsbury Hall at 5.2. They've got Sunderland at home in game week 37, which doesn't look too bad. And Everton are still fighting for European places as well. So you wouldn't expect them to be rotating. There is a scenario where if Everton drop points in 37 and the teams above them win, that they might go into game week 38 where Europe is not a possibility. But I think I would be backing Everton to beat Sunderland in game week 37, therefore still having something to play for in game week 38 in most cases. So I think they're fairly safe for the final 2 game weeks. I'm never quite as sure when the final game is away from home, but I think in this particular case we'll be okay. Whether you go for Ndiaye or Dewsbury Hall, it's a close call because underlying numbers-wise, they're quite similar. Dewsbury Hall takes some set pieces, Ndiaye is on penalties. I like both of them, and if you're struggling for cash, Dewsbury Hall's the one to go for. But I just think, as I said last week, I would probably just take the guy that's on penalties. I know Ndiaye has not been returning loads of goals and assists. In fact, I've not even checked when he last got a return, to be honest with you. Let's have a quick look now. 1 goal back in game week 31. So he is on a bit of a barren spell. Even before that, it was 1 assist in game week 29, 1 goal game week 26. He's not prolific. And Dewsbury Hall has been better this season. Someone actually said to me, why have you never considered Dewsbury Hall? I had him at the start of the season. I think he's great. He got an assist this week, goal against West Ham in 34, assist against Liverpool. He has been better recently, but I think I'm still just taking the penalty taker between the two. But if you wanted to go Dewsbury, it's a close call. If you prefer Dewsbury Hall, he's good as well. And I think both of them are pretty good going into game week 37. And I also think the ownership is quite low as well. And I suspect, and again, I've not checked this, I really should check these things before I start recording. I doubt Dewsbury Hall's being brought in by 20,000 people because he's done better recently and over the season and just got an assist. Whereas Ndiaye, barely any transfers in at all, 5,000. There's not that many transfers being made in general this week. 5,000 for Ndiaye and 20,000 for Dewsbury Hall. And I suspect Dewsbury Hall's ownership was already higher. So that just pushes me more towards the guy that's lower owned and on penalties. But it's not to say Dewsbury Hall's a bad option, because he isn't. But I quite like both of them, and they're good value. Should still have something to play for against Spurs away in 38. I think 2 pretty good fixtures. I mean, Spurs away is maybe not looking quite as good as it was before Dewsbury. But I've said this over the last couple of game weeks. There isn't really too many players that you can bring in that are great and also have 2 great fixtures and are also guaranteed to play in both those fixtures as well. Like Arsenal players, if they don't rotate in game week 38, I love them for the final 2 weeks. But there is that scenario where they've got nothing to play for going into 38. Like there's not many players that are just perfect to bring in, and that includes these Everton players. Like Spurs away is not as good as it looked, but I'd still back Everton to score in that game at least once. So I quite like him. Ndiaye for me, Dewsbury Hall's also good. So there was a comment on my stream yesterday basically calling me out. And you know what? I think that person was right. Essentially, they were saying that I'm considering Ndiaye, and yet when anyone mentions Bruno Guimaraes, I'll say that he's not all that attacking, which he's not, to be fair. His underlying numbers are not that great. But what this person pointed out was that Ndiaye's numbers are also not that great. And that is correct. And another thing they mentioned was at the moment, with Gordon not getting a look in, Bruno Guimaraes is on penalties. And that is something that I hadn't considered. Now, to be fair, Voltemada started the match yesterday, got about 60 minutes. There is a chance that Voltemada would take a penalty over Bruno Guimaraes. But he's not been getting many minutes recently. Gordon's been on the bench for 2 games and not even played at all. Right now, Bruno Guimaraes could be on penalties, and the underlying numbers are similar to Ndiaye, and it's West Ham at home, which is not bad, and Fulham away in game week 38 is not that bad either. Fulham are not exactly putting in tons of great performances right now. So I think you're correct. And also, he's not that bad for DEFCON. Like, he's not as good as a Declan Rice or an Elliot Anderson, but he's okay for them, as I've said before. And he actually picked them up this week and came very close in the Brighton game. So in my defence, I've got Gabriel. No, I'm not going to do that joke. In my defence, at no point have I said, I don't think over the last few weeks, that Bruno Guimaraes is a bad pick. I just couldn't get that excited about him. But you're right. The underlying numbers are not that much better for Ndiaye. And if Bruno's on penalties right now, that does make him a better pick. So I quite like him. I think in terms of popularity, Ndiaye will still be more of a differential going into this week. But it's not like Bruno Guimaraes is a 70-80% owned player. And if you look at the transfers in, like he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8th most popular this week, just behind Casemiro, by the way, didn't play the last game, although should be fine this week. So he's not, like Doku's got 74,000, Bruno G's 12,000. So he had a bit of, traction the last couple of weeks when he came back, but not massive. So he's somewhat of a differential. I think Ndiaye will be lower owned. And you're right. He's not that bad of a pick. So I think you're right to call me out on that. But again, I have said he's okay. I've just said he's not really one for me. I'm not trying to sit here telling you shouldn't buy him. But yeah, I will consider him more now. I definitely will. 6.8 million. I just think there's still something telling me that in any given game, like if Everton and Newcastle were playing the same fixture, I still just picture Ndiaye getting more chances, even though the stats don't necessarily back that up. That's just how I picture it. And also, I'm a little bit fixated on Ndiaye right now. This is probably a bit of bias because I considered him last week and didn't go for it. So maybe I've got a bit of tunnel vision on him. And also, like, if someone's looking at Trossard versus Bruno G or Ndiaye, then Trossard's just a bit more interesting as a punt. But look, he's a good pick. If you want to go, I don't have any reasons for you to not pick Bruno Guimaraes. I think they'll go pretty strong for the final 2 games. All-rounder and 2 pretty good fixtures. So fair play for calling that out. I think that was correct. He's fine as a pick if you want to go there. Will I buy him? Probably not still. So as I've just mentioned him there, let's talk about Jeremy Doku. No midfielder has more transfers in so far this week than him. He got an 11-pointer against Brentford after a 15-pointer against Everton. I think I said something last week after the Everton game. He's not going to keep curling shots in from outside the box. And boom, what does he do again against Brentford? A very similar shot. And he's obviously very good at it. I would say he's not one to buy though. I think the boat has been missed. If you went there as the differential play over the last couple of weeks, fair enough. But I wouldn't want to bring him in before Bournemouth away when that game is 3 days after the FA Cup final. Now, if Man City beat Palace, which they're quite likely to do, then going into that Bournemouth game, the title is still on. And so I don't think there will be heavy rotation, but it just doesn't seem a risk worth taking. What if Doku picks up an injury in that FA Cup final and you don't find out until after the deadline? Now, there's a different conversation here if you already own him. Like, I've got Semenyo, and as long as City beat Palace, I'm pretty sure I will just play Semenyo in Game Week 37 and take the risk that he doesn't get injured in the FA Cup final and then take the risk that he starts against Bournemouth. But in terms of bringing a player in, I just think I would play it safer. Go for a player from a team that doesn't have an FA Cup final before they play in 37. So Doku's obviously been good. He was the one to go for instead of Cherki, and all that talk about Cherki to Semenyo. In the end, the answer was Doku, it seems. But I just don't think I would go there this week. So just a few notes from the weekend. In terms of relegation, Leeds, Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest are all now mathematically safe, so they cannot get relegated anymore. Inevitably, conversations will start up about them being on the beach, whether we should ignore them, whether we should target them going into the final 2 game weeks. I think the on the beach conversations are always interesting. For me, it's more about being able to safely predict minutes. So Leeds, for example, do not strike me as a team that will just down tools. I just don't think that will happen. It's also worth pointing out that teams get more money the higher up they finish. So although there might not be Europe or relegation to worry about, maybe the club as a whole will want them to finish higher, of course. So I don't think Leeds will down tools, but obviously it becomes a bit more difficult to predict the minutes. So a lot of people on stream last night were saying they'd rather play their Brighton players with something to play for rather than Leeds. That's fair enough. I think you can create your narrative whichever way you want. Either way, Leeds now, I guess, a little bit less interesting from an FPL point of view. Palace definitely less interesting because there's definitely fear of rotation because they've got Europe. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to rotate the whole team for the final 2 games. That Arsenal game in particular, though, that is going to be difficult to know. And then Brentford might depend on how many players play against Man City, like which players play against Man City. Nottingham Forest, I think for me, would just be an avoid as well. Like Man United away, Bournemouth at home, the final 2 games, it's nothing to get excited about, I would say. Obviously, Chris Wood, Awani, they're sharing minutes in number 9. You could look at like an Elliot Anderson, for example, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets benched for one of these games, just to give him a bit of a rest. He's played so many minutes this season. I just think, there's no way I bring Leeds players in, basically. Maybe you can play the ones you've got. Palace, I think, are done from an FPL point of view, and I wouldn't be going near Forest either. That's my take on it. For Man United, Mbeumo was benched. He needs to be sold. Like, people will ask me whether he starts the next game. My assumption is he probably does come back in, but I can't guarantee it. As far as I know, there's no injury there. Maybe he's just having his minutes managed a little bit because they've got Champions League done. I don't know. This is the problem, right? If you've got a title on the line and you've got a player with a minor injury but that could get through the game and he's really important, you play them. Whereas if you've got nothing to play for and a player's got a slight doubt, you just don't risk it. That's kind of the difference when teams are on the beach. That's what I'm talking about from a minutes perspective. So maybe there just is something there with Mbeumo that's super minor that Carrick doesn't want to take a chance with. I was very surprised he didn't start, especially with no Šeško. So for me, that's just a sell. I wouldn't bother risking it for the final 2 weeks. Šeško not in the squad. He's just not an option. Carrick mentioned that he's been carrying an injury. So again, they're not going to risk him anymore. Casemiro should be fine for next week. Apparently, there was a clause in his contract that if he hit a certain amount of games, they had to give him another year. Now, a few weeks or months ago, that was said to have been agreed that it's not a thing between the club and the player. I don't know. Either way, Carrick said he'll be fine for next week. So he's an option if you've already got him. Gordon was benched again and got 0 minutes again. He's a sell. Again, people ask me, what do I think about him for the last 2 weeks? Will he come in? I don't know is the honest answer. I think based on the last 2 matches, we have to say probably not. Like 100% if I'm predicting the Newcastle team for Game Week 37, Gordon's not in it. So he's a sell. And do not buy him. Wilson for Fulham, subbed early, 2nd game in a row. So 61 minutes in Game Week 36, 63 in Game Week 35. I don't think he's necessarily a sell because I think he will start the next game. And the last 2 fixtures are okay for Fulham. There's no way I'll be buying him now. I've completely ruled him out as an option. like Ndiaye, Bruno G. You know, I've always had Bruno G like close to the top of the list, as you'll know if you've watched a lot of these videos. Then Ndiaye, Wilson in that kind of cheap midfielder options, not for me now. I think he will start, but the minutes would just concern me. I think after the Arsenal game, I thought, okay, that's Arsenal, fair enough. But now he's been subbed early again. That would put me off. It's not necessarily a trend like we saw with Semenyo. He got subbed early twice in a row, then played 90. Wilson could do the same. But with 2 weeks to go, I'm not taking that risk. So for me, not. I think you could sell him if you've got the luxury to do it. No other issues to worry about. But I wouldn't be buying him. That's for sure. So I'm just going to run through some early thoughts for my own team heading into game week 37. I've got 2 free transfers and 1.7 million in the bank. And I think the team looks okay on paper. It's not perfect, but it's fine. And I think if this was like game week 7 or game week 16, and I was thinking more longer term, I'd probably roll this team. That's how happy-ish I am with it. But obviously, there's only 2 game weeks to go. If you can't make luxury transfers in game week 37 or 38, when can you? So I'm going to make at least 1 transfer this week, probably a defender, and then I may well use the second transfer as well. So in goal, Darlow against Brighton at home, Verbruggen on the bench against Leeds away. There were a lot of questions last night about why I'm playing Leeds players over Brighton. Now Leeds are safe and Brighton have still got Europe to play for. It's a fair point. I just don't see Leeds as a team that are going to down tools. I think they will still go for it. And therefore, I quite like backing the home fixture. But I might change my mind on that. I think playing Brighton players is absolutely viable. And if you feel strongly about it, you should definitely play them. I've also got Struijk in my back 3. We'll see if he plays tonight. He is currently yellow flagged. I may well just put Van Heck in, but to be honest with you, I'll probably sell Struijk. So whichever defender I bring in will come in Struijk's place. And that's why Van Heck's really on the bench. In terms of who to bring in, Arsenal defender, definitely right up there. I quite like Saliba, but he just, like, double defense is never bad. I've had double defense for most of this season. Just Saliba individually is not that interesting. And buying players that are not that interesting is fine. It's what I do for most of the season. But what I really wanted was like Ben White or Calafiori. But now I feel like I can't buy either. So I might just go for Everton instead and buy Tarkowski or Keane. I think I prefer Keane. And also he's cheaper, which might help future, other moves this week or another move in game week 38. And I think that's where I'm going to go, rather than Saliba. It's not to say Saliba's a bad pick, because he's not. He's a pretty good pick. But I might just go for Everton instead. And also, again, I really should check these things before I start recording. I suspect that, apart from Tarkowski, Everton defence is not being heavily brought. Yeah, Tarkowski's 17k. Michael Keane's probably nowhere to be seen, because he didn't just get 2 attacking returns. Let me see how long it takes me to find Keane. 2,386 transfers in. Behind Heaven, who didn't start the last game, didn't come off the bench either. Behind Munoz, Porro, Kukurea, Chow, Maguire, Lewis Skelly, Kadioglu. So I quite like Keane. I think Saliba is... Where is he? He's the most brought defender this week, which isn't a surprise because most people already own Gabriel. So I might go a little bit different there. Gabriel's definitely getting played, no questions asked. I think with Man City, there's obviously all the scenarios I talked about earlier. If they drop points to Palace and Arsenal beat Burnley, league's over, essentially. So maybe they rotate against Bournemouth. But let's just wait and see what happens in the Palace game, first of all. The chances are Man City win. The chances are I just play O'Reilly, because if he gets minutes against Bournemouth, we know what damage he can do. Saka, currently my captain. I'm not set on that. I think getting the 90-minute penalty taker in Bruno Fernandes against Forest at home is a really good option this week. And with Saka, I do think he'll start, but he could get subbed early. He's not necessarily on penalties. It's a close call. I think right now the armband's on Saka because it's Burnley. That's basically what's doing all the heavy lifting. I don't know. Honestly, this stage of the season, you just... I always think people write narratives more than they do throughout any other part of the season. And there is just something telling me Fernandes is like all the stick I got for picking Fernandes at the start of the season, and he's part of the reason I'm at the rank I am. Do I just reward him with the captaincy? And I do think captaincy is probably going to be heavily skewed towards Arsenal players this week. So Fernandes might even be somewhat of a differential. I don't know. I got asked this question on stream yesterday. I'm finding it difficult to know who's going to get the most captain. Like, that's such a bad way of wording it. Who the heaviest... Oh, my God. Okay, think. Who the highest captain player will be this week. I don't know. We could have a scenario where like Saka, Gyökeres, and Fernandes are all like 110, 120% effective ownership. Some people will captain Haaland as well. I won't be doing that. Not 3 days after the FA Cup final with other players with better fixtures. So yeah, Saka as it stands, it might switch to Fernandes. Gross against Leeds away, I'm kind of happy with, although I may well sell Tavernier for Ndiaye, in which case I will bench Gross. Not because he's bad, but because there's 2 game weeks to go and I've got to use these transfers at some point. And if it's Ndiaye or Gross for game week 37, I'd rather have Ndiaye. And I don't mind him for game week 38 either. And then Semenyo Bournemouth away, again, I think he's just a bit of a minutes monster. I think he'll keep starting. So I'm kind of okay with him as it stands. Let's see what happens against Palace. Calvert-Lewin, Brighton at home. Haaland, Bournemouth away. And João Pedro, Spurs at home. I could, and people have got me thinking about this from last night, I could just go all in against Leeds. So if I do Tavernier to Ndiaye, I could just play Gross and Verbruggen and not play Calvert-Lewin and just go all in on Brighton. Because I'm probably going to sell Struijk anyway. So Struijk to Keane, Tavernier to Ndiaye, and bench Calvert-Lewin rather than Gross and play Verbruggen. I'll probably go one way or the other. I'll probably go Darlow and Calvert-Lewin or Verbruggen and Gross. And a lot of that will come down to whether I think Calvert-Lewin starts. And if I do, I'd probably go the Leeds way because of the penalties. Although Gross might be on penalties as well. It's hard to know. I don't know. João Pedro I'm fine with. Like, there's some risk there because he plays in the FA Cup final as well. He might get injured. But at some point, I've just got... I can't remove all my City and Chelsea players. And I think João Pedro for the final 2 game weeks is not that bad. Spurs at home, Sunderland away. So, as it stands, I'm making a defender transfer. Saliba, Keane, Tarkowski are probably my top picks, I would say. Probably going for Michael Keane. I think so. There are like 1 or 2 Everton fans that are kind of may put me off a little bit by saying, could he get rotated? I guess there is a small chance, but pretty much whenever Branthwaite's been out this season, Keane has played. So I think he's okay. So Struijk to Keane and maybe Tavernier to someone and bench Gross or Calvert-Lewin. I think that's the plan. I don't... Maybe I'm just terrible at my job, right? There is a high possibility that is true. I'm just not seeing a huge amount of amazing options that I should be considering instead. I think I went through this on stream last night, so I'm not going to do it again. But I look at the fixtures this week and next week, and like there's plenty of options that are fine, like Szoboszlai, Bruno Guimaraes, Ndiaye, Dewsbury Hall. But there feels like there's no perfect player. And I think defensively, I don't really see much outside of Everton and Arsenal. I don't see a better defence to look at. Like, Chow is fine if you've got him, but I'm not going to bring him in. I'm not going to bring in the Brentford defender when they got Liverpool away in game week 38. Can't risk Chelsea. I've already got triple City. I don't mind Porro, by the way, for game week 38, but I don't really want to buy Porro for Chelsea away. So, yeah, I think it's Everton or Arsenal defender, and then I decide whether to make a midfield move. I don't hate... As you can probably guess, I don't hate making the 1 defender transfer and then just rolling and playing Calvert-Lewin and Gross and going into game week 38 with 2 free transfers because there could be rotation. Again, just to say it, if City beat Palace but they drop points to Bournemouth, which is possible, title could be over by game week 38. Then I'm sat there with Haaland, Semenyo, O'Reilly, Saka, and Gabriel, and who knows which of them will start. That could require 2 free transfers. So we'll see. We'll wait for that Palace City game, then start making some decisions. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button, even though I don't know what I'm talking about really. But there we go. You got through 37 weeks, well, nearly 37 weeks for me. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know. It's just too early. I'm a little bit tired. Give it a like, hit subscribe, please. And I'll catch you tomorrow for transfer tips. See you then.